Hello and welcome to the Nation Jendela. The Jalinan Digital Negara or Jandela Plan provides wider coverage and better quality of broadband experience for the Rakyat whilst preparing the country for 5G technology. In this episode, we zoom the lens into digital inclusion to ensure all individuals and communities, including the most disadvantaged, have access and use of information and communication technologies, or as we know it, ICTs, as well as benefit fully from better connectivity. In other words, inclusion patches up the digital divide. Joining me today is Dr. Fadhlullah Suhaimi Abdul Malek, Chairman of MCMC, and we're here to talk about digital inclusion. Welcome back to the studio, Doctor. How have you been?
Well, busy, but busy is good, as I say.
Well underway in phase one with many of the milestones or targets already achieved.
Right.
In terms of giving us sort of an update of where things are at this moment,
Right.
where are they?
Well, if you look at a milestone, this would be at the end of the second quarter or the phase of the first phase. Okay, so the last time I mentioned we provided a report for the first quarter, so we will be providing a report for the second quarter of phase one, which we should be publishing it on the 7th of April. Okay, thus far, touch wood, we're doing decently, reasonably well. Okay, the providers have been working very hard, okay, even with all the challenges that they had to face, and most of the targets have been met. Okay, so as I say, you're only as good as your last quarter, so we'll be moving on to the third quarter, and we'll see how will we progress in the third quarter.
That's right. Everything seems on track, from inception of the plan or the project up till now. But one very important aspect of this mega plan, of course, is inclusion, and that obviously is important because it contributes to economic and workforce development, education as well as healthcare and overall safety as well. So let's zoom into that. When we talk about inclusion, what does that mean in the Jandela Plan, and why do you view it as important?
When we talk about digital inclusion, the most basic thing is to say nobody gets left behind. Okay, so when you talk about nobody gets left behind, it means every single citizen in the country should have the ability to use internet, be it being able to pay for it, being able to have access to it, being able to then use it for their own betterment. Okay? So when you talk about digital inclusion, it means that everybody will be involved, okay, it will be avail of the services. Now, but people say, okay, what's the big deal? Now the big deal is this: if you don't have a digital inclusion approach of things, there'll be a group of people who will be moving too far ahead, then you have another group of people who will be left behind. And what happens is that you actually end up having two socio-economic groups, the haves and the have-nots. Okay, and this is where Malaysia is really different from other countries, because other countries you may not have a national policy of inclusivity. Okay, so we used to use this word equitable. Okay, so when you talk about being equitable, those who don't have it, you need to then help them get to that point.
And this is a little bit tricky in that aspect because there isn't a world standard. There isn't a gold standard towards a strategy to ensure that everyone is included, or rather no one gets left behind, except if you look at the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, which that is obviously their tagline.
But countries, I guess, each country will have to find their own policy that fits their own needs. But at least for Malaysia, we've always had this policy of inclusivity.
Which segments of society have you identified for this inclusion plan to be successful?
Simplistically, you look at it, it's okay between the urban and the rural, and then within the urban poor and those who are the middle income group. So the urban poor will be a focus group that we look at. The rural population will be the next, and then within the rural population there will be pockets of population who are probably remote. Example, the orang asli. okay, or some people who may be living in the highlands of Borneo who may not have those services. So these are the targets that we try to reach out to make sure that they have access to internet. And when I say access, should have access to good internet, okay, because internet comes in different levels of quality, okay, and because of that, a lot of work needs to be put into play. Okay? So just now you asked me, what do you mean by digital inclusion? Okay, so well, people like to, if you really go deep down, you're looking at three angles. At a personal level, you need to make sure that you have the skill, you have the access to technology, or in this case, the access to internet, that will then help you utilize it to change your own future, if you want. All right. So it's just like those days when we were just starting out, when the country was just starting out. I guess you are of the younger age group. People like me, in the early 60s. Okay, people don't speak English. All right. So coming from a kampung, who speaks English, right? But because my parents felt that I needed to know English, they invested a little bit in that, what they could. And today I'm able to converse in English. But it was a process for me. So likewise for internet, if you allow young kids to have access to internet, the world is an oyster. So that's on the personal side. On the economic side, the internet is a leveler, which means whether you are in a rural area or in town, you have the same access to market. Okay, because before you needed to have roads to connect. Today we have roads, but again, the cost of transportation is a challenge. The cost of marketing is a challenge. But with internet, what's the cost of marketing online? Hardly anything, right? So that allows economies in the rural to grow, reaching out to a larger market. Yeah. I like to tell this example. A couple of weeks back, I was in Hulu Terengganu. Okay, Hulu Terengganu. Yeah, that's quite a remote part of Terengganu, and there's this kampung called Kampung Tekawang. Then people say, okay, go look it up in the map. So I met this young lady who was doing a business selling air asam, okay, in a jar for roughly what? I think the smallest jar went for about 20 ringgit. And I said, how much did it take for you to start the business? Well, I spent 100 ringgit. So how long have you been doing this business? She said, for 2 months. So what's your income now? I'm getting about 7,000. So I said, what's your profit? I have no idea. Okay, because the point is, she knew how to make, she knew how to use the internet at the Pusat Internet community, so she sold, and she got that.
Right, I'm going to hold you on that note. When we come back after these few messages, we continue our discussion right here on The Nation Jendela. We're talking digital inclusion, patching up the digital divide. See you soon.
Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the new normal requires Linda, a university student, to attend online classes. She often experiences disruptions from unstable internet connection as her internet access is shared with other students in her condominium. The high traffic also causes Linda to take a long time to access websites related to her studies. Introducing Jendela, a government initiative to improve Malaysia's communications infrastructure and broadband coverage. This move will reduce the digital divide and enable cities, suburbs and rural areas to receive better quality broadband services. Jendela will be rolled out in phases. The 3G network will be gradually terminated as the 4G network is expanded to give Malaysians access to high-speed mobile lines throughout the country. Additionally, all fibre service providers will continue to lend their support by upgrading their network capacity and deploying more base stations to meet the increase in 4G and 5G traffic. This will pave the way for future technology adoptions such as wireless and fixed wireless access, VoLTE, and 5G to achieve the country's digital agenda. Jendela's efforts in increasing the reach of fiber optic services enables Linda to upgrade her internet service and get the latest hardware. She can now surf the internet in all corners of her home without any interruption. This digital transformation will raise the people's economic status and advance the country's socio-economic progress.
Hi there, welcome back to The Nation Jendela. I'm Jessie Chahel. Joining me in the studio today is Dr. Fadhlullah, Suhaimi, Abdul, Malek, chairman of MCMC, the driver of the Jandela Plan, of course, taking the nation to greater heights. We're talking things like a better connectivity, a better internet connection to bridge those digital divides as well. That's all part of our topic of conversation today. Of course, you know, the past year has really revealed to us some areas of improvement in terms of bridging that gap, and I think it really kind of underlined as well the topic of inclusion. Perhaps to use the word, some of the blind spots of segments of society that we never realized, unfortunately, that did not have access. And so after having determined these segments as well, understanding sort of the weak points, weak spots in the chain, what is the plan now?
Okay. At the macro level, the plan is obviously to improve the coverage, okay, because we need to make sure that the blind spots are covered. Second, would actually to increase the quality of service so that it is a lot more robust and provides a more consistent service for people to use. The third part is actually to then target people who may have difficulty in accessing it. Okay, so this would be people who are of the lower socio-economic strata, okay, the B40, be it individuals or families of the B40. So when you talk about access, there are two parts to it. Number one is access to the service, so which is cost. Second would be then access to a device, okay, so which is also another cost item for them. And for that, the government, via the Ministry of Finance, together with the industry, had come up with a subsidy whereby for individuals who are of B40, you could actually have a subsidy of 15 ringgit for the package, or if you decide to buy a device, it's 180 ringgit for the device. Now, for the children or families who are of a B40 with school-going children, they too can still get the 15 ringgit for the subsidy of the access, or if they opt to buy a device, they have a higher subsidy for a device to an amount of 300 ringgit. Over and above that, the industry is also subsidizing a free 1 gigabit per day. Okay, again, it is all meant to allow people with who are in a position of not being able to have access to it, to kind of facilitate them and do that. And third would be people who have access but don't know how to utilize that access. So this is where we have a Pusat Internet community, where we do the outreach program for them to then be trained up to teach them how to use simple things like online marketing, or doing little videos with their phones that they may have, and uploading it for either for their own benefit, or if they want, they could even use the internet for them to improve their skill sets, which will then allow them to have new skills and new ability to generate income for themselves.
That's right. I mean, it all sort of funnels towards affordability, of course, cost playing an important role here, but ultimately the objective, of course, to earn a better living as well, having access to the world, which it really is at your fingertip on your keyboard or on your mouse. And so with the subsidies you've mentioned, the allocation has increased to 2 billion ringgit. When you pair that, of course, with the 1 gig access or free access to the internet as well. So overall, let's move into the By Hati program as well. How does one gain access towards that?
So the By Hati is yet another layer of assistance provided. This one is done by the industry together with MCMC, where we are reaching out to Malaysians, okay, to have the act of giving. But I'm not asking for new stuff. giving away your old devices that you may not want to use, but it's still usable, and it can either be phones, it can be notebooks, or computers. And how it works is very simple. All you have to do is walk into a selected provider's store, Maxis, Celcom, TM, U-Mobile, what they call Time, the stuff. Go in there and you can just ask the counter guys and say, I would like to donate this device to my
not a trade-in.
Not a trade. To donate this for my By Hati, and they'll do the rest. It's as simple as that. Okay. Now, what happens to that device is that device then gets assessed. If it is usable, it will be refurbished. Okay, so that it is back to a good usable condition, and then it will then be brought into places like the Pusat Internet Community as a means to then give it out to people. Now, depending on the number, the initial number we will keep them in Pusat Internet so that people can come and use. But if the numbers that get donated is really, really good, we're looking at 3 million. So that's a huge target, right? But hopefully Malaysians would want to do away with the old devices, and so these old devices gets refurbished, and then eventually someone who may need it could use it. Okay, for people who may afford to buy a new one, by all means go buy a new one. You're getting a tax rebate anyway. Okay, so why not? Okay, so get a new one. Enjoy.
Win-win situation.
Win-win, and then the old one, don't throw it away. Send it to the telecommunications provider outlets.
Well, that's a great a concept or a campaign to have as well. But I'm interested to know really how are you measuring the success? Because the thing with many of these mega plans is once it's done, it's done. But how do you ensure that it is sustainable? It has direct impact, and how are you going to measure really the success of this plan?
I would say nothing in this world has got a single measure. There'll be multiple measures. Okay. The first measure would be measuring the parameters that determines, say, example, coverage. So we talk about coverage, populated areas. So that's the first parameter. Second, we talk about the measure of quality. The third would be a measure of inclusivity, meaning that people now have access and are using it. So examples of measures such as that would be the Digital Inclusivity Index. Okay, so like then that's done by an entity called Roland Berger. Okay? And for 2020, thankfully we are actually pretty good. Not too shabby actually. We are ranked second in Southeast Asia. Okay, which means many of us are actually, well, if you want, we are becoming digital warriors. Okay, so we know how to use it. So there's a lot of, so the level of security is high. So that will be another level of measure. The third level of measure would probably be more of a proxy, okay, which is the measure on the economic index, where we then can see how much of all this digital effort actually contributes to the economy. You see, many years ago, we were doing other things, and you look at the economy, today you've got services as a contribution to the economy. So who knows, that would be the next level.
That's right. Who knows, because the opportunities through this window, through this Jendela is really limitless. As they say, the sky is the limit. We take yet another breather. When we come back, more right here on The Nation Jendela.
Yati is a housewife in Kuala Lumpur. Having lived here for a long time, she misses her mother's nasi kuning. Can Yati use the latest smartphone and fast internet access to call her mother, who is in a remote area in Sabah? Introducing Jendela, a government initiative to improve Malaysia's communications infrastructure and broadband coverage. This move will reduce the digital divide and enable cities, suburbs and rural areas to receive better quality broadband services. Jendela will be rolled out in phases. The 3G network will be gradually terminated as the 4G network is expanded to give Malaysians access to high-speed mobile lines throughout the country. Additionally, all fibre service providers will continue to lend their support by upgrading their network capacity and deploying more base stations to meet the increase in 4G and 5G traffic. This will pave the way for future technology adoptions such as wireless and fixed wireless access, VoLTE, and 5G to achieve the country's digital agenda. Thanks to improved infrastructure through Jendela and by upgrading to a 4G smartphone, Yati is able to speak to her mother without any interruption. This digital transformation will raise the people's economic status and advance the country's socio-economic progress.
Welcome back. You're watching The Nation Jendela. The Jalinan Digital Negara Plan is aimed at providing wider coverage and better quality of broadband experience for the Rakyat while preparing the country for 5G technology. Of course, we've been talking about digital inclusion, bridging that gap, the digital divide to ensure digital equality amongst the Rakyat as well. Although there isn't a one-size-fits-all strategy towards this. It is an agenda that needs to be promoted over and over again. And of course, the plan here is to ensure that internet reaches each and every segment of society, even the blind spots, as we mentioned. There are many ways, of course, through this. One of the programs is the By Hati program. We just spoke about that. Let's talk a little bit more in terms of its duration and timeline. The target is 3 million sets.
We hope to get 3 million. Okay, we are dependent on Malaysians to contribute. We're running the program for a year, for 12 months. But if the response is good, I'm sure we could certainly extend that. That's the first one. Second, today we have only 6 service providers who are involved, but certainly we look forward to have more partners who may want to do that. But we'll still use the same outlets for collection because they are already readily available out there in the market. Okay? And this is where I like to call upon nations. Don't throw away your notebooks. Don't throw away your old phones. Please donate them, okay? Because there are others who may have better use for it rather than throwing into the scrapyard.
Plus, it's eco-friendly as well,
and
because it will get...
it's a form of e-waste anyway, right? Okay, so it's no longer e-waste. It's just that we recycle it, we use it. But for those that's truly bad, then certainly we will have to do an e-waste program for that. So again, that will also help improve our carbon credits.
That's right. As we have maintained here on the program, it is a win-win situation for this mega plan. But one of the points to really take note of is ensuring that we patch the digital divide. And I know that's really one of the thrusts of your mega plan, especially in this phase as well. Now, overall, does this mean that Malaysia wants to enhance its position in the Global Digital Inclusion Index? As you said, during the last sort of polls, we were at a second position.
Well, look, I think index is, being ranked high in index is great, okay, but that should not be our objective. Okay, our objective at the end of the day is to increase the income of our citizens. So if we all become a high-income nation as a result of a digital approach, well and good. Okay, and then looking back and saying, did we do things right? Having a third party measure us is always great. And if we end up being ranked number 2 or even number 1 in ASEAN, that's great, okay? But like I said, that should not be the single objective. The objective is always going to be making sure our people would have the ability to generate a better life for themselves. And using digital as a means would probably be one of the, if you want, the more modern way of improving our livelihood.
What else is on the aspiration list in terms of really ensuring that the patch of this divide, is secure and sealed once and for all? I understand it's perhaps next to impossible. It's a tall order, but it is not.
It's not impossible. As I always like to tell my colleagues, it's the word impossible is I am possible, right? So hence we set ourselves a very high target. We work very hard to achieve that, and hopefully by doing that, we are able to future-proof it. Okay, but who knows? The next generation will have to improve on things. Okay, as we have done for our generation of our forefathers, we're doing things better and better. And I'm quite sure there'll be new technologies in the future. But at least for the next, say, 5 to 10 years, whatever that we're doing today, hopefully it is resilient enough and robust enough to hold out that long before the next inflection point could come in. And who knows, with technology, inflection points will come, will happen in a very short period between one another. Okay, so that is what we try to do today.
The final, sort of the end of the timeline is 2025.
2025 is our runway. Okay, when we thought about on how to improve the connectivity. So Jendela has a 5-year runway. If you look at the My Digital that was announced by PM, that has got a 10-year runway, although a lot of it would probably be front-loaded in the first 5 years. And then we revisit back on the plan, what next for the next 5 years. And that ties back to also the national plans, because the Rancangan Malaysia, okay, that we are going now with Rancangan Malaysia ke-12, will also be over 5 years. So we are one of the very few countries in the world that have got a proper planning approach, and it takes on a 5-year cycle. People may say good and bad things about it, but still, having a plan is better than not having a plan. Okay, and the next challenge is to execute the plan correctly.
That's right. And with that plan in mind, that wraps up our conversation right here on The Nation. Jendela, thank you.
Thanks again.
And once again, kudos to you and the team. It is a tall order. It is such a huge project, but we are seeing fruits of labour.
We're seeing the early buds.
The early buds. Well, thank you so much for joining us right here on The Nation. Jendela, remember, it is the national plan to provide wider coverage and better quality of broadband experience for the Rakyat, while also preparing the country for 5G technology. Take care, stay safe and stay home. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
I'm Dr. Fadhlullah Suhaimi Abdul Malek, Chairman of MCMC. For the latest on the National Digital Network Plan, watch The Nation Jendela every Thursday only on Bernama TV.